Welcome to the Office on Violence Against Women, Fiscal Year 22, Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, Stalking Grant Program, or ICJR, formerly known as Arrest Program, pre-application webinar for continuation applicants. This webinar will be presented by the OVW ICJR team members, Aisha Battle, Amanda Wilson, LaShonda Beasley, and Jason Petrie. Although we will not review every page and section of the solicitation, there have been several important changes to the fiscal year 22 ICJR solicitation, and when you want to make sure that you are aware of those changes. Please put any questions that arise for you in the chat box. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. We highly encourage you to read the solicitation in its entirety before beginning your application. First thing to know is hopefully you found us because you have already downloaded the solicitation. For information on how to apply, we have provided you with a link in this slide, www.justice.gov/OVW/how-apply. Be sure to use that link. It has valuable tools such as links to the solicitation companion guide and resources for your application. We have also provided the ICJR solicitation link as well, which is found under www.justice.gov/OVW. Go to OVW Grants Program and then open solicitations. The most important thing you should do before applying is to read the ICJR solicitation in its entirety from the beginning to the end, and we can't stress this enough. The fiscal year 22 solicitation has a few important changes from previous years. Also, be prepared to hear us to repeat several things during this webinar that applicants oftentimes overlook. As we move through the slides, you will see page numbers references that correspond to the pages of the solicitation. The ICJR program is the largest and one of the oldest discretionary grant programs at the Office on Violence Against Women. Over the years, the ICJR program has changed names, but the purpose has always stayed the same. It encourages states, local and tribal governments and courts to treat domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking as serious violations of criminal law, requiring the coordinated involvement of the entire criminal justice system. In fiscal year 22, OVW will accept applications from new applicants, meaning those who have never received funding under the ICJR program or had previous funding that expired more than 12 months ago, and continuation applicants with an existing or currently closed within the last 12 months award. Grant recipients who received new or continuation funding under the ICJR program for 36 months or in fiscal year 2020 or fiscal year 2021 are not eligible to apply. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There is no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. Therefore, OVW encourages you to develop a plan to sustain project activities if federal funding through the ICJR program were no longer available. The grant project period is either 36 or 48 months. It will be 36 months if your project is seeking to address purpose areas 1 through 21. Projects seeking to address purpose areas 22 for the first time will receive a 48-month project period. There are a couple common mistakes made by applicants regarding the award period. First, the budget does not reflect a either a 36 or 48 month month of project activity. Second, the total estimated funding block 15 on the SF 424 does not reflect either 36 or 48 months. Generally, the award period will start October 1st, 2022. Carefully consider the resources needed to successfully implement the proposed project and present a realistic budget that accurately reflects project cost and when each phase of the project will begin. Example, are you able to hire someone on October 1st, or will it take a few months? Also consider the various partners associated with your application and their resources needed. Keep in mind that your service area will be the entire area that your proposed project will serve. If you propose to implement a project in a city, county, or multiple counties, be sure you use the population information for the entire service area. A service area population up to 400,000 is eligible to apply for up to 500,000. A service area population of 400,001 to 700,000 is eligible to apply for up to 750,000. A service area population over 701,000 is eligible to apply for up to $1 million, and statewide projects are eligible to apply for up to $1 million, regardless of population. Understand, OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate the scope of the project, of the work and budget with applicants prior to award of a grant. In fiscal year 22, OVW will give special consideration to applicants that meaningfully address one or more of the following statutory purpose areas, which is detailed in the solicitation. When considering whether application meaningfully addresses one of these purpose areas, OVW evaluates the proposed goals, objectives, activities, and budget. Not less than 50% of each item must be used to support the stated purpose area. Funding can support salaries, fringe benefits, officer overtime, supplies, equipment, training, and travel costs. Activities supported by the ICJR program are determined by statute and federal regulations. Applicants must address at least one statutory purpose area listed on page 5 through 7 of the solicitation. The ICJR solicitation changed the purpose areas that victim service providers and coalitions can apply to. If you are a continuation applicant that is doing work under a proposed area that is open to government and court applicants only, your government partner will now be the lead applicant, and you as a victim service provider or coalition will be the project partner. Victim service providers and coalitions applying as the lead applicant may seek funding to address purpose areas 5, 10, and 17 only. Due to the complex nature of developing multidisciplinary high-risk teams focusing on reducing domestic violence and dating violence homicides, applicants selecting purpose area 22 can only combine it with purpose area 3. To further address the complexity of this purpose area, OVW launched the Domestic Violence Resource and for Increasing Safety and Connection, or DV-RISC, in October of 2020. The Center for Court Innovation is operating DV-RISC, and we are excited to have this new opportunity available for grantees. Continuation applicants implementing Purpose Area 22 for the first time will have a 12-month planning phase for a total of 48 months. Include 48 months of activity, include a 48-month budget, and be required to work with the Center for Court Innovation to conduct a community assessment before selecting a specific tool model to implement. Although not required, there are 4 statutory priority areas defined by legislation that applicants can address. In fiscal year 2022, all applicants addressing one or more statutory priority areas will receive 1 additional point during the recommendation process. To distribute funds across the country and to support innovative projects, special consideration will be given to continuation applicants proposing to meaningfully expand, enhance current projects. Examples include countywide projects as an additional town utilizing a tool, FJC focused on risk assessments as a forensic nursing risk assessment tool project, adding a high-risk team to further assist survivors. Current grantees with 50% or more of previous funding remaining after March 31st, 2022, without justification, may not be considered for funded at a reduced amount. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Information on activities that compromise victim safety and recovery and undermine offender accountability can be found in the Solicitation Companion Guide located on the OVW website or included by link on page 8 of the solicitation. Applications that propose any activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from further consideration entirely. On page 8 of the solicitation, we have listed 6 activities that have been found to be out of scope for the ICJR program. Applications that propose activities that are deemed to be substantially out of scope may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration entirely. ICJR funds can only be used to serve adolescents and adult victims age 11 and older. Funds cannot be used to serve victims under the age of 11. Pursuant to 34 USC section 10461C, the following entities are eligible to apply for the ICJR program: state, Indian tribal governments, state, local, tribal, and territorial courts, including juvenile courts, units of local government, state, tribal and territorial government, domestic violence or sexual assault coalitions, victim service providers. The solicitation has additional information and definitions for each of the eligible applicants. Make sure you read the eligibility information on page 11 and 12 of the solicitation. The Violence Against Women Reauthorization of 2013 changed the definition of unit of local government, making police departments, pretrial service agencies, district and city attorney offices, sheriff's departments, parole and probation departments, and universities non-eligible entities to apply as a lead applicant. These entities cannot be the lead applicant because they are not units of local government for the purpose of the ICJR program, nor are they considered state, Indian tribal governments, or state, local, tribal, or territorial courts. Per the ICJR program solicitation, the definition of unit of local government is set forth in 34 USC section 12291A40 and is any city, county, township, town, borough, parish, village, or other general purpose political subdivision of a state. Applications from typical non-eligible entities that want to assert unit of local government status under 34 USC section 12291A40 must include their application proof of such status. If these agencies or organizations do not meet the definition of unit of local government, they are not eligible to apply directly for funding, but may assume a partnership role and responsibility for the development and implementation of the project. They must apply through a state, local, territorial, or tribal court, an Indian tribal government, or a unit of local government. Non-eligible entities can fill out the application, assume responsibility for the development and implementation of the project, but it must be submitted through your state, Indian tribal government, state, local, tribal, and territorial court, including juvenile court or unit of local government. Failure to comply with this will disqualify your application during the review process. As a victim service provider, coalition lead applicant, you are required to partner with a state, Indian tribal government, or unit of local government, and must submit with your application a certification of eligibility as described on pages 13 and 14 of the solicitation, signed by the Chief Executive Officer of the government partner on government agency letterhead. Victim service providers must show in the application a history of working with survivors to a level supported by community stakeholders. Coalitions are statutorily defined and recognized organizations. Nonprofit organization requirements. Any entity that is eligible for this program based on its statute as a nonprofit organization must be an organization that is described in section 501c3 of the Internal Code of 1986 and is exempt from taxation under section 501A of that code. C34 USC section 12291B16B1. OVW cannot make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter from the Internal Revenue Services. OVW will require that each applicant develop an MOU with its project partners if awarded funds. Applicants that are victim service providers are required to engage in a formal collaboration with a state, unit of local government, or tribal government, as well as any specific governmental organizations that are necessary for the implementation of the proposed project. Likewise, a governmental organization are required to partner with a community-based victim service provider, a nonprofit, and or a state recognized domestic violence or domestic and or sexual violence coalition. If your proposal addresses a culturally specific or underserved population, a population-specific organization must also be included in your MOU. Applicants must also include other governmental organizations that are necessary for the implementation of their project. You must involve the mandatory partners in the development and implementation of your project. If you fail to include these mandatory partners, your application will be removed from further consideration. And I'll hand it over now to Jason Petrie to continue.
Thank you, Lashandi. The ICJR program has two certification requirements. They are the certification of eligibility and the HIV certification. In addition to meeting the eligible entity requirements to apply for funding, all applicants must certify that their laws or official policies meet the ICJR statutory requirements detailed in 34 USC section 10461, subsection C, in order to receive funding through the ICJR program. All certification and other eligibility related documents must be current, developed in accordance with the FY22 ICJR solicitation, signed by the Chief Executive of the state, Indian tribal government, unit of local government, or court, and submitted at the time of application submission. The certification of eligibility signatory is based on the service area of the proposed project. For example, if you are proposing a statewide project, the governor would likely be the chief executive to sign. A chief judge or court administrator for a court applicant, and a mayor or county executive or tribal chairman for a unit of local government or Indian tribal government. Instructions and a sample certification of eligibility letters are on the resources for applicants page under the program-specific resources heading on OVW's website. Applicants whose submissions do not meet all the eligibility requirements at the time of the application deadline will not be considered for funding. Submission of state, tribal, territorial, and/or local statutes, HIV letters, or laws and policies in lieu of a letter with proper certification signed by the chief executive will not satisfy these statutory requirements. And please note, applicants will not be contacted by OVW to correct certification letters. States and units of local government who receive ICJR funding must meet the requirements for HIV testing of offenders. If you are not in compliance, 5% of your awarded funds will be withheld. Tribes, victim service providers, and coalition applicants are exempt from the HIV requirements and do not have to submit any documentation. Please note that applicants will not be contacted by OVW to correct certification letters. The ICJR program requires the following 5 documents be submitted. The proposal narrative. The proposal narrative can be no more than 20 pages. Any pages after page 20 will not be reviewed for purposes of peer review. The budget detail worksheet and narrative. The award period is 36 or 48 months. So please make sure your budget detail worksheet and budget narrative reflect either 36 or 48 months. The data requested with application, formerly known as the summary data sheet. A partnership agreement. In rare circumstances that a court is prohibited from entering into a partnership agreement, a letter of commitment may be submitted. And finally, the certification of eligibility letter must be submitted along with the application. And you can find a sample certification of eligibility letter on the OVW website under the resources for applicants page, and then under the program specific resources heading. The data requested with application is one of 4 pages in length, is 1 to 4 pages in length, and may be single or double spaced, and does not count toward the 20-page limit for the project narrative. Provide the start and end date of the next state or tribal legislative session in the data requested with the application. The proposal abstract should be no more than 2 pages and is double spaced. It provides a short and accurate summary of the proposed project, including who will be involved with the project, what will be done as primary activities, what products will be produced, the service area where the proposed project will take place, and who will be impacted by the proposed project. Applicants should not summarize past accomplishments in this section. The proposal narrative may not exceed 20 pages in length. It is double-spaced and is comprised of the following 3 sections. 1, the purpose of your application. 2, what will be done, and 3, who will implement the project. Please ensure you are addressing what the solicitation requests in the correct sections. Please stay within the budget caps and remember to include items listed in the mandatory program requirements section. Be sure your budget reflects either 36 or 48 months. The budget should not contain any items that are not detailed in the project narrative. A sample budget detail worksheet is available on the Resources for Applicants page. Grantees under this program may not issue a solicitation or request for proposals to redistribute these funds after receiving an award. The next couple of slides, we're going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, or GFMD, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year applications that could help with expediting your review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included with your application. The first things we'll highlight are the items identified in the data requested with the application, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, 3 items we would like to discuss are the nonprofit organization requirement, the single audit response, and the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure. If you are an eligible victim service provider, you are required to submit a determination letter from the IRS recognizing your tax-exempt status. OVW cannot make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter. We highlight this specifically because applicants are not including this as part of their application. This further delays our review. So please ensure this document is included if it is applicable. OVW requests all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If your organization has, then you meet the single audit threshold and will need to notify OVW in the data requested with application question number 3 and include the end date of your last fiscal year. GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include this information and leave out whether they have met the threshold or do not provide the end date of the last fiscal year. Another item we would like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you must reference the additional required information section that provides the required disclosure letter. There are 4 parts to the disclosure letter that must be provided to OVW in order to comply with this requirement. The sample letter outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure, so please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The sample letter can be found on the OVW website and is linked on page 21 of the solicitation. The next item we'd like to discuss are the financial accounting practices, which assists GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must be prepared to respond to all 11 questions. Each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant, which may delay recommendations. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, on question number 2, where the applicant indicates they do indeed have internal policies, but they do not provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. Another example of incomplete responses includes question number 3, where the applicant does not provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but please make sure you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. There are 5 unallowable activities that are applicable to almost all OVW programs. Lobbying, except with explicit statutory authorization, fundraising, the purchase of real property, physical modifications to buildings, including minor renovations like painting, carpeting, and security cameras, construction, and finally, some costs are only approved on a case-by-case basis, so please make sure you provide lots of detail around those needs. If you propose using funds to purchase uniforms, weapons, and/or automobiles, please ensure you provide a detailed description of the need as it relates to your project, as well as the cost. We will now quickly highlight some resources that are available and should be used as you're creating the budget to be submitted with the application. Over the last year, GFMD has worked to develop a detailed webinar presentation to assist applicants in developing a budget to be submitted with their OVW applications. They want to help reduce any challenges you may face with the budget and make it clear what they look for when they review the budget. This webinar provides some insight as to what OVW financial staff considers during their review. The webinar can be found under the Budget Information section on the OVW Resources for Applicants page. Additionally, the Just Grants page has resources on completing the web-based budget in Just Grants. Next up is the Uniform Guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR Part 200. Another resource is the DOJ Grants Financial Guide, as well as the program-specific solicitation. If you need assistance finding these resources, please contact the GFMD Help Desk. We know this can be a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions about the GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 888-514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Applicants are required to set aside $20,000 total for training and technical assistance for the lead applicant and project partners for 36 or 48 months. TTA funds must be shared with project partners. Applicants from Alaska, Hawaii, or a U.S. territory are required to set aside $40,000 for the 36 or 48-month project period. So now I'd like to hand it over to Amanda, who will finish us off.
Thank you, Jason. New this year, all formal partnerships must be documented in the form of a partnership agreement or letters of commitment, an LOC, at the time of application. The partnership agreement is in replacement of the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, only at the time of application. Non-court applicants will be required to develop and submit an executed MOU by the end of the first year of the project period, and lead court applicants may submit an LOC in lieu of an MOU. See Memorandum of Understanding section for additional information on the partnership agreement requirements. Court lead applicants who are precluded from entering into a partnership agreement as I said, may submit an LOC at the time of application. For purposes of this solicitation, the partnership agreement is a document containing a collaborative agreement between an applicant and its partners, in which the lead applicant and other organizations collaborate for the purpose of an application. Important deadline and due dates. Please read this section of the solicitation carefully. It covers in detail the registration process and explains OVW's policy for applicants without internet access, on duplicate applications, experiencing unforeseen technical issues, late submissions, and extraordinary natural or man-made disasters. For the submission process, it is broken down into two parts. We will detail the process over the next several slides. Information about IT support for either process can be found on page 2 of the solicitation. The FY22 application process submission is, like we said, a two-part process. Application materials will be submitted in grants.gov and Just Grants. We recommend starting the application process, even just the grants.gov and Just Grants registration process, as soon as possible to allow for furthering progress in the Just Grants system. Read the solicitation carefully to understand all the steps required to submit an application and the time needed to complete those steps. Some steps, such as obtaining a Data Universal Number System or DUNS number, or registering with the System for Award Management or SAM, or grants.gov, may take several days to complete. As of yesterday, April 4th, 2022, the federal government will stop using the DUNS number and move to the new Unique Entity ID, or a SAM number, as the UEI. The Unique Entity ID, or SAM number, is a 12-character alphanumeric value, and once issued, will not change. Entities that are currently registered in SAM.gov already have a Unique Entity ID, or SAM number, which can be viewed in SAM.gov. As of today, you do not need to obtain a DUNS number. Simply register with SAM.gov and you will be provided a UEI. We recommend applicants begin these processes as soon as possible, but no later than the dates suggested in the solicitation. Applicants must complete the application for federal assistance, known as the SF-424, in grants.gov. The specific information required for this step is included in the information to complete the application for federal assistance, SF-424, section of the solicitation. Applicants must also complete and submit the disclosure of lobbying activities, the SF-LLL, in grants.gov. After submitting these forms, the applicant will receive an email notification that from Just Grants to complete the rest of the application in Just Grants. If the applicant is a new user in Just Grants, the email will include instructions for registering for Just Grants. Applicants will submit the full application, including attachments, in Just Grants. If you applied for OVW funding in prior years, you will notice some significant changes in the application process. In the Just Grants system, applicants will enter some application information directly into text boxes in the system, fill out web-based forms, and upload some documents as attachments. We have included the following major elements of the application as examples of what applicants will submit in Just Grants. The proposal abstract will be entered in a text box. The data requested with application will consist of responses to questions in a survey. The proposal narrative will be uploaded as an attachment. The budget worksheet and budget narrative will be entered into a web-based form. The partnership agreement and/or letters of commitment will be uploaded as an attachment. In addition to these major elements, other documentation will be required for all applications or when applicable. Read the solicitation carefully for a full description of all items required within a specific application. In Just Grants, each applying entity will have an assigned entity administrator who is responsible for managing entity-level information and assigning roles in the system. The entity administrator is also the eBiz POC designated in SAM.gov. For more information on registering with Just Grants, please refer to the website justgrants.usdoj.gov. Within 24 hours of Just Grants receiving your application from grants.gov, the user submitting the application in grants.gov and SAM eBiz POC will receive an email to register for a Just Grants account. The email is from DOJ's Secure User Management System, DIAMD, D-I-A-M-D, and will include instructions on how to create an account. To ensure you receive these emails and that you have not flagged them as spam, we recommend adding diamond-no reply at usdoj.gov to the Truster Sender list in your email settings. The eBiz POC at the applicant organization serves as the entity administrator and must log into Just Grants to confirm the entity's profile and add users. The user submitting the application in grants.gov serves as the application submitter. Within minutes of completing your Just Grants account registration, the application submitter and the eBiz POC or the entity administrator users will receive an email from Just Grants with a link to the application started in grants.gov. Alternately, the applicant submitter can log into Just Grants and locate your pending application, numeric digits excluding the word grant, and the grants.gov tracking number in your task list on the home or landing page. The entity administrator will need to log in to Just Grants to review the authorized representatives associated with the entity. If an authorized representative needs to be invited, the entity administrator will need to invite the individual to receive a Just Grants account. Note that an organization can have more than one authorized representative, as long as those individuals have documented authority to sign an agreement with the federal government. These actions are required before an application can be submitted. Within minutes of being invited as an authorized representative, the individual will receive an email from diamond-no reply at usdoj.gov with instructions on how to create an account in DOJ's Secure User Management System. Once the authorized representative receives the email and completes the steps to create an account, the authorized representative will be available in Just Grants. The application submitter will need to complete the application by entering data into web-based forms, uploading attachments, and accepting assurances and certifications. The application submitter will need to select the authorized representative. Once all sections are complete, the application submitter will submit the application. Upon successful submission of an application, the application submitter, entity administrator, and authorized representative will receive an email from Just Grants confirming submission of the application. The Department of Justice has made a collection of self-guided training resources, including training and a virtual Q&A session on application submission, available at justgrants.usdoj.gov/training-resources/grants-management-lifecycle. Applicants intending to apply for FY22 funding under this program are strongly encouraged to submit a letter of intent. The letter should state that the applicant is registered and current with SAM and with grants.gov. The letter should be submitted to OVW at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov by April 12th, 2022. This letter will not obligate the applicant to submit an application. See justice.gov/OVW/resources-applicants for a sample letter of intent. Tips for a successful application. Read the solicitation in its entirety before applying. Follow the solicitation. Provide relevant, detailed information about the proposed project. The information presented in the application will be the only information used to review and score your application during OVW's peer review process. Use all available assistance in the process. Examples include OVW staff and TA providers. Please pay close attention to the solicitation. Keep in mind application registration and submission due dates. Do not wait until the last day to upload your application. Grant managers do not work 24/7. If you experience a problem after normal working hours, it could mean all your hard work was for nothing. Ensure each section is completely addressed, even if it feels redundant, and be sure to include section headers. Number all pages and limit the use of acronyms. Make sure you attach the final version of each document and check the upload to ensure it was successful. Upload each attachment and provide a simple, clear, and concise title. For example, FY22 Program Narrative, FY22 Budget Narrative, FY22 Abstract, and so on. Do not title all documents attachment, final, or document, and use incredibly long or vague titles. Applicants are strongly encouraged to submit their application at least 36, but no less than 24 hours before the deadline. And after application submission, authorized organization representatives, or AORs, should closely monitor their emails for any notification from grants.gov about a possible failed submission. The AOR will receive a minimum of 2 emails from grants.gov. One will confirm receipt of the application package. The other will either notify the AOR that the application was successfully submitted, or it will notify the AOR that there was an error with the application submission. The ICJR unit is comprised of program specialists and grant managers, Aisha Battle, Amanda Wilson, LaShonda Beasley, and Jason Petrie. LaShonda Beasley is the ICJR solicitation point of contact, so please contact her by email or phone if you have any questions regarding the solicitation or the ICJR program. Also listed here is the OVW website and OVW's phone number. If you need technical assistance with grants.gov, please contact the grants.gov applicant support line by emailing support@grants.gov or by calling 800-518-4726. If you need technical assistance with Just Grants, please contact OVW Just Grants Support by emailing ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov or by calling 866-655-4482.
If the chief executive position is vacant, is there a requirement for who may sign in their place?
There's not a specific requirement. It is who in that, for that entity can legally obligate that entity into entering into a contract. So for if you have a mayor and that mayor position is vacant, do you have a deputy mayor who is there in place and able to sign other contractual agreements?
Okay, next question. If a victim service provider is the applicant, but working with the city and county of their area and has the mayor as a partner, do we still have to submit an HIV eligibility certification?
If the victim service provider is the entity applying, then they do not need to have an HIV certification because they are not a unit of local or state government.
Okay, next question. What is the difference between an MOU and a partnership agreement? And should a partner, should a partner, in this case, the police department, be included in the partnership agreement if they are not funded or not in the ICJR grant budget?
Thank you for that question. So a police department would actually not be an entity that could sign the partnership agreement. So the partnership agreement is an agreement stating that the lead applicant and the required partner are agreeing to enter into this application together. An MOU will be required in future months if awarded funding, and that MOU will discuss more of the broader efforts to combine a coordinated community response to serve that area. So if you look at the template for a partnership agreement, it is very detailed and specific about who should be signing the partnership agreement, and that at that point, you are just agreeing to enter into the application together, and you are agreeing on the content of the application.
Okay, next question. The data requested with application and the solicitation has formatting errors that make it difficult to have all the information prepared for entry into the system. Is it possible to get a revised version?
Sarah, can you, if you're able to unmute your mic, can you specifically say the data request with application should be entered directly into the system?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, my issue is that, it lists the different, like I'm mostly talking about 12, 13 on that list. It says you have to enter these things, but it's not clear what you're supposed to enter because there's no numbering. There's no, it's formatted strangely, so you're not sure what is being asked for what part. I figured it out, but I'm wondering if anyone else is having that problem. And I'm a little worried that, when you take this information, you may not, when someone's going to enter it, they may not have all the information they need in front of them.
It should have drop down. I see what you're saying now. It should have drop downs, and that's probably why it doesn't have it in the actual solicitation. But those should be, I believe, drop down options in the Just Grants.
Okay, that makes more sense.
If we do the partnership agreement, do we also need letters of commitment?
So letters of commitment should only be submitted by courts that do not believe they are legally able to enter into a partnership agreement or an MOU. There are certain courts across the country that feel they cannot enter into any sort of formal agreement. Therefore, they submit a letter of commitment. If you are able to get the required partners and lead agency to sign the partnership agreement, you can have a court submit a letter of commitment if they are agreeing to be part of the partnership. But if they are not the lead applicant or the required partner, then they do not need to submit a letter of commitment at the time of application.
Okay, so next question. I'm hearing that the MOU is not needed at the time of application, just the partnership agreement. Is that correct? And the MOU would not be submitted with the application, but if funded or awarded, an MOU would be required to be submitted at a later date.
Kathy, you have it exactly correct.
The MOU would be submitted within the first year.
Correct.
Can you go over who can sign the letter of intent?
Anyone is eligible that will be participating in the project to sign the letter of intent because it is a non-binding letter.
Okay, so I have another question in the chat. We have an FY 2018 ICJR grant award in a one-year extension period ending September 30th of 2022. When FY 21 and FY 2022 were referenced as ineligible to apply, I understood that to mean if you received an award in either of those years. Please confirm that an FY 2018 awardee would be eligible to apply for an FY 2022 award.
Yes, you'd be eligible to apply for a fiscal year 22 award if you received a fiscal year 18 and it has an extension to September 30th, 2022.
Okay, next question. What if we already have an MOU? Do we still need to do a partnership agreement as well?
Yes, you do. As you read through the partnership agreement template, you will see that what you are agreeing to as partners is to the information included in your application. So you will require a new signed agreement stating that you agreed to enter into the information that you are including in your application.
Okay, next question. If we have an existing grant under one unique entity ID and want to submit a new application under a different unique entity ID, can you do that? Or must you submit a continuation grant request?
Is this for different entities or for the same entity?
Different entities.
If it's for a different entity, then you would use the different entities UEI.
But the same partners, just a different entity as the lead.
Yeah, so if it's a different lead applicant, you would use that lead applicant UEI. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Angela, please note that if you are a new entity applying, you would be considered a new grantee.
Okay.
And you would be subject to that 4-year new grantee award that includes a 1-year planning period for establishing or re-energizing a CCR.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have a comment. It's thank you for the clarification on the partnership agreement. We thought we needed to include all collaborative partners in that agreement as we had done with the MOUs.
No, the goal of the partnership agreement is to actually make the application process more simplified, and that the lead agency and the required partner are agreeing to the content of the application. And then if awarded, then the community's partners will come together and reestablish an MOU, moving the project forward into implementation.
I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so I think we can wrap up.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for participating in today's FY22 continuation pre-applicant information session. Please email LaShonda Beasley at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov if you have any questions, and good luck with your applications.